So for today's lesson, we're going to break down writing a lesson plan. So you want to start by writing the name of the lesson plan. You want to date it, put your school district, your campus, what grade level that you're targeting. Of course, your name is going to go under author. And if you had a mentor teacher, so if someone helped you to create the lesson plan. And then, of course, you want to put your subject area that you're going to be discussing. So for student population, you want to talk about the grade level in which you're teaching to. Grouping, so if you're going to target a specific group based on their achievement level, or if you're going to teach to the entire classroom as a whole. You want to also in this section list if you have any language differences. So if you have English as a second language, or any learners that maybe have some difficulties there, and any exceptionalities that you may have. So if you have a student on a 504 or things like that, you may want to document that here so that you're aware that you're going to be working with that as well. So for your learning community component, here you want to discuss the demographic that you're teaching to, maybe the area that you're working in, the school district classification, whether it's elementary, middle school, high school, your classroom content, whether it'll be self-contained, team teaching, block, etc. And then, of course, your classroom arrangement and seating that'll be utilized during the lesson. For materials and resources, in this section, you want to list all materials needed for the lesson. For websites, YouTube, other electronic resources, you want to provide the link with a brief synopsis and samples of all documents created and used in the lesson. This document should be located at the back of the lesson as appendices, and this should include student activity and or assignment instructions and PowerPoints. So in the safety section, you want to make sure that you cover what are the conditions of being protected from or unlikely to cause danger, risk, or injury to classmates, school, or self. This section should include safety concerns and precautions specific to lessons or experiments. When appropriate, require the students to include safety information in laboratory written work, such as a statement or paragraph indicating the safety equipment used and safety practices followed. Students' compliance with safe techniques and practices may become part of a teacher's evaluation of laboratory work, and a record of this evaluation should be included in the lesson plan as legal proof of this additional safety instruction. So under the TEKS section, you want to make sure that you cover any TEKS that will be used to create this lesson plan. For instructional objectives, the lesson's objectives must be clearly defined and in line with district and or state educational standards. The goal of setting objectives and goals is also to make sure that you know what you're trying to accomplish within the lesson. This helps you to determine what the student should take away from the lesson and how you will go about ensuring that they're successful in mastering the material at hand. So for the anticipatory set, before you dig into the meat of your lesson's instruction, it's important to set the stage for your students by tapping into the prior knowledge and giving the objectives a context. In the anticipatory set section, you outline what you will say and or present to your students before the direct instruction of the lesson begins. This is a great way for you to make sure that you're prepared to introduce the material and that you can do so in a way that your students will relate to it easily. For input or procedure, you want a clear explanation of the objective, purpose, and strategy. Introduce essential question and content of the lesson. Identify the activities and events that will lead to learning, and include all steps the teacher should follow, including the sequence. Be sure to indicate cooperative learning and or other methods that the teacher should follow. All statements should be derivative in form. This is the section where you explicitly delineate how you will present the lesson's concepts to your students. Your methods of direct instruction could include reading a book, displaying diagrams, showing real-life examples of the subject matter, or using props. It's important to consider the various learning styles within your class and determine what methods of teaching will best resonate. Sometimes creativity can pay off in engaging students and helping them to understand the material at hand. For input or procedure modeling, making sure get it right the first time depends on the knowledge or processes to be shown or demonstrated by an expert or by someone who has mastered what is to be demonstrated or shown. In addition to the instructor, prepared students can certainly model the focus, skill, process, or concept for peers, and instructors could also use a video for this portion. The I do, you watch. Instructor demonstrates and explains skill, activity, strategy, concepts communicated in multisensorial ways. For guided practice, the we do together, students complete the structured task with extensive instructor guidance and feedback. This is the time where you oversee and guide students practicing what they have learned so far. Under your supervision, the students are given a chance to practice and apply the skills you taught them through direct instruction. The guided practice activities can be defined as either individual or cooperative learning. And then for the independent practice, the independent of teacher, you do alone, I watch, students work on their own and apply to a real life context, and the instructor gives feedback. Students will demonstrate whether or not they've absorbed the lesson's goals through independent practice. Students have a chance to reinforce skills and synthesize their knowledge by completing a task on their own and away from the teacher's guidance. So for assessment, students demonstrate skill mastery of what was taught in the lesson, and the instructor provides feedback that is immediate, positive, and corrective. The lesson doesn't end after your students complete a worksheet. The assessment section is one of the most important parts of all. This is where you assess the final outcome of the lesson and to what extent the learning objectives were achieved. So for reteach, when reteaching is necessary, teachers should deconstruct the standard by breaking it down into progressive learning targets. You want to understand exactly where the student currently is on that progression and know what steps are needed next for that student to continue toward meeting the grade level standards. You want to clearly communicate the learning targets in student-friendly terms with the student and encourage that student to set goals for themselves as they are learning to develop self-efficiency. For the enrichment extension, enrichment is based on a topic that student is interested in that will lead to new in-depth learning, or these projects can be based on the topic you are currently teaching but allow students to have a compacted curriculum. To help challenge students, teachers need to create enrichment projects that allow them to dig deeper into the content that you are covering. These projects are done either by themselves or with a partner or in a small group. These projects are usually hands-on and bring in some real-world lessons, and these projects can use students' prior knowledge as a baseline, and the project will push them deeper into the topic. The project enhances a student's education by bringing new concepts to light or by using old concepts in a new way. Extension activity is an activity that extends the learning of the lesson. Extension activities can be done in small groups or by a single student. These extension activities are leveled to fit the student. So for gifted students, these are going to be more challenging. And for struggling students, these activities can be reinforcing the skills activities. Students don't choose their extension activity like the enrichment project. In closing your lesson plan, the instructor and students review lesson objectives and revisit essential questions. This portion of the lesson provides closure to the lesson. As you design this, ask yourself, how can you encourage further inquiry regarding this lesson topic? And that's writing a lesson plan. Thanks for listening.